Hello and welcome to another Lord Slar panel discussion where this week we are discussing the second episode of the Flux serial of Series 13, and that episode is War of the Sontarans. And to discuss it with me today, I have two guests. The first one is Rory.
Hello, hello.
And Jack.
Hello.
So we've basically got the same crew we had from the Russell T Davies live stream. There was meant to be another person coming here, but as is traditional with panel discussions, there's always one person who doesn't turn up. It has to happen at this point. Right, so...
Well, we can just make up the numbers, we've got insightful things to say. We can do it.
You're just such a big personality. You take up too much room.
Exactly.
Man. Right, so let's start off by talking about the 13th Doctor, Jodie Whittaker. How did we think she did in this episode, and how well was she written? We'll start with you, Jack.
I am not the biggest fan of the 13th Doctor, but I think the story made the right choice of, for once, having her be in a stressful, difficult situation where she's got to think on her feet and come up with plans and then follow them through. It's nice to see that happen. So even though I'm not a huge fan of the way 13 is generally characterized, I think this is probably one of her better outings.
I'd have to absolutely agree. I mean, most episodes I find the 13th Doctor just really cringy to watch because of all of the unfunny jokes. I don't really like the whole not being that self-assured kind of thing for the Doctor. It's something it just doesn't rub off well with me. I prefer the Doctor to be quite, confident and, brash and out there. And obviously Jodie Whittaker very much isn't that as the Doctor. But I felt that in this episode I did actually see a bit more of the Doctor in her. And I enjoyed it. There were still a couple of moments which I wasn't a fan of. I'm struggling to forget the exact ones because it was a few days ago since I watched the episode. But for the most part, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And especially with her confrontation with the Sontarans. That's the first time I've seen her have a confrontation with a villain. It's like, yeah, this is the Doctor having a proper confrontation with a villain. Like, kind of taking the piss out of them a bit. But not in a way which just kind of belittles the villain. Like, what she'd do... Like, for example, the confrontation with Tim Shaw, I just found that to be really awkward and devalue the villain a bit, whereas I felt the confrontation with the Sontarans, specifically, was, like, very doctory scene.
Well, I think Jodie benefits most when she plays the Doctor, when she doesn't have sort of side characters around her to bounce exposition off of. So I think she benefited a lot in this episode from being separated from her companions. And even then, when she's not with Mary Sequel, who we'll get onto, I think that confrontation with what was his name, Skak or something like that.
Scat.
I think his name's Skak.
His name is Scat.
Yeah, because they want to make a hit the road Jack joke. That is the only reason he was called that. But I really liked that scene, and I think in general she was a lot better here than she has been in other episodes. And I think that comes down to being isolated from the companions, because when the companions are there, she basically functions as just an exposition machine to explain to them, who the companions are us, like the surrogates for us, what's going on. When they're not there, they have to give her actual dialogue.
Now that's actually a really interesting point. And I think just like this is the cogs literally in real time running my brain thinking about what you've just said. It kind of makes sense why, for example, in the Hartnell era when they had three companions, or in the Davis era when they had three companions, they almost always got separated. And I think that is really something that Jodie's Doctor's been needing, to be separated from her companions, because I can't really think of any stories where she has been for an extended period of time. And kind of separating them up a bit gives a little more room for the Doctor to really be herself, rather than just, as you said, answering the questions the companions have. And this is an episode which utilised it really well. There's some episodes which I think didn't utilise that kind of opportunity well, like Spyfall Part 2, but this episode definitely did.
Well, I don't even think you need to go that far back. Like, if you look at, like, Tennant's run, like, even, like, those Sontaran episodes, like The Poison Sky and whatever, they deliberately separate him from Donna and have them do their own things, so that it gives them both opportunities to sort of shine as actors. Whereas in a lot of Chibnall's era, he has the companions just following Jodie behind, the companions following Jodie, and they don't really do anything. And I think, again, this episode benefited a lot from separating them and have them deal with their own problems individually to help with their characterization.
God, that's something I haven't actually ever noticed before, but you're absolutely right. In the vast majority, or maybe not the vast majority, but like in most of Chibnall episodes, at least a higher proportion compared to the rest of Doctor Who, the main cast do just stick together for almost the entire thing. Whereas, I can't think of many classic episodes where the companion and the Doctor don't get separated, and same with kind of, Russell T Davies and Moffat Who. So, yeah, that's actually a really interesting point, and I think that might actually be one of the reasons why characterization's been so difficult, because the scenes have always been so crammed.
I don't have a think about that. It's just something I've been thinking about for a while.
I see. I hadn't thought of that one before. That was a completely new thing to me, but it totally makes sense. And yeah, really really good point to bring up. Cheers, Rory. So I think that probably wraps it up for the 13th Doctor. Unless anybody has anything else to say.
Bottom of the line, she was better in this episode than she has been in most of Chibnall's run, I would say. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I'd say this is her second best outing as the Doctor to Haunting of Villa Diodati.
Agreed.
It's probably the only 2 episodes that I say where she really felt like the Doctor to me, whereas I didn't feel she had.
Oh, and what happens in Villa Diodati? What happens to the companions? Do they all stick together for that episode, or do they all get separated throughout the house?
Oh yeah! Don't kill.
We'll get onto that.
Don't kill big spiders or Sontarans. The only person it's okay to kill is the Master, but only when he's not white. Anyway, let's move on to the companions before I get cancelled. Right, what do we think, Rory?
I like them both a lot. I like Yaz a lot more. I don't know what they've done. They've just made her more interesting. They've remembered that she's a police officer, which is fun, and they've given her attributes which you would expect from a police officer, i.e. the ability to take charge in an unfamiliar situation. And I really like Dan as well. I like how quippy he is. I think John Bishop has to have been ad-libbing or touching up the script, because the humour is just working a lot better, especially when it comes from him. I like that they were given their own things to do. Yeah, okay, we can get onto the plot contrivances and the issues with, the meat of the story, but I on the surface, I like them both a lot, and again, just a vast improvement on what we've seen so far.
I get what you're saying about Yaz, because she certainly does seem to have a character now, all of a sudden. And while I'm obviously not opposed to that, I've been calling for her to have a character for ages, I would have liked to have seen a bit more of character progression from kind of the earlier Yaz, who was just basically a bit of cardboard in the background, to all of a sudden this confident Yaz who's trying to emulate the Doctor. I would have liked to have seen a natural progression to the point where they're getting to that stage. I mean, I can't believe I'm defending this, but with Clara, when she did that, look, I hated the arc and I hated how it was done, but at the very least, when she was trying to emulate the Doctor, there was actually a kind of build-up over the course of series, so we can see how she got to that point. I hate how it was done, I don't like it, but they did at least do that bit, the basics of kind of show, don't tell, have the character development happen gradually rather than just have them change on the whim, and that's what feels happened here. And, I'm glad that she's got a character now, so it is better than it was, but I still kind of have my criticisms of it. And as for John Bishop, I feel like I like Dan in the same way I liked Graham, because the actor is very charismatic. Not necessarily because I think there's really a whole lot there in terms of the character writing, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, Yaz is definitely better than she was now. They've actually come up with something which she does, which is her thing, which is trying to sort of impress the Doctor by trying to do the things which he thinks the Doctor would do. And I just quite like Dan, and is just he doesn't know what's going on, but he's going to get in there with his walk, and he's going to give it a go. He's got a pan, but not much of a plan.
That's good.
In regards to... Oh, sorry.
No, yeah, you go, Rory.
Well, I was going to say, in regards to Yaz, I don't know if it's character progression or if it's more they've realised that this is the character she should always have been. Because, again, if we go back to those introductory scenes in A Woman Who Fell to Earth, that sort of assertiveness and control, which you would expect a police officer to have, is something she now suddenly has again, despite the fact that in most episodes between then and now, she's been a passenger.
It's been meekly in the background, and it's not at all like that. But, yeah, you could certainly say that, in a sense, they have remembered that character exists, at least that one trait we saw in the opening scene.
I mean, it's not good that with, 2 years... over 2 years down the line, when was Jodie's first series? Was it 2019?
2018.
3 years. It's not good that we're 3 years in and she's only just returned to the characterization she initially had. But, at least it shows some level of self-awareness in regards to the writers, that they've figured out that, this is her definable characteristics. And I thought she played off Vinda quite well as well. I actually quite like that side, sort of strange, weird, almost like E-Space-esque sort of segment in the temple. I thought it was quite fun.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely get onto that stuff.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you about Dan. I think it's just because I do like John Bishop. But I think, like the puns and the lines and stuff are just so sort of delivered with such earnestness and like sincerity that I can't help but like them. So yeah, maybe it is just because he's John Bishop, but if that's the case, that's the case.
Well, it's kind of similar to Graham in that sense. It's like we liked him because he was funny chase man and also delivered his lines very earnestly. Right. Okay. So the next section, let's talk about the Sontarans. Let's talk about the Sontarans. They're probably one of the biggest talking points of this episode. Would you like to go first, Rory?
Sure. Aesthetically, like how they look, fantastic. I don't think anybody disagrees that this is a much better redesign than the Davy Sierra sort of weird purple hue with
baby
the
blue
and the turquoise. Yeah, not a fan of them and the sort of the smooth face. Whereas I really like the prosthetics a lot more now. I like how they look. Characterization wise, like, I mean, I guess you have to make them somewhat bumbling, but they don't. I mean, it's weird because when you separate their interactions, I think the Sontarans in contemporary Liverpool are a lot more threatening than the ones in the Crimea. Like, they have the Sontarans doing like grisly shit, like using a firing squad and stuff like that, summary executions and things. I think that's quite fun. Not fun, you know what I mean? Like, it speaks to the ruthlessness. And also, to be fair, in the Crimea scenes, I think the battle scene is also pretty good. But then you also have scenes that sort of damage that, like when Dan somehow avoids 50 shots on like a straight street and they can't hit him for toffee, and it's like, okay, well, they're not that threatening, are they? Or...
And people are defending that moment. People are defending that moment as, oh, well, that is a trope that happens in every sci-fi, therefore it's okay.
It's like... Well, okay, you can have Dan be shot at by a Sontaran in the alleyway and have them miss. Just don't make it so there are like 10 Sontarans there and they all miss. Have it be like one.
Yeah, have it like he narrowly dodges like one or two shots. Yeah, exactly. Just anything to kind of suspend my disbelief a bit more.
Maybe he grazes his shoulder. Maybe he gets his shoulder grazed or something with like a burn. You know what I mean? Like,
especially bear in mind that these are meant to be trained soldiers who, like, they've been trained for aim their whole life. And then they like have a stormtrooper moment, which, by the way, it's bad when stormtroopers do it too. I'm not a hypocrite on that.
I think the trouble with the Sontarans is they're an iconic villain, but there really isn't much depth to them at all. And even if you go classic Who, it's like the Time Warrior is pretty good. People are mixed on the Sontaran experiment. I kind of like it because it's just of how mean and grisly it is. But beyond that, it's like they don't really have much going for them. They're fairly two-dimensional. And in this story, I think it sort of showed. It's like there's really not much to them.
Well, I mean, I'm going to disagree there because in the Time War, I think there is very clearly a definable kind of character to the Sontaran personality, where you have Lynx, who's like somebody who's bred for war. It's almost like a parody of militarism, where it's war for the sake of war. We love war, but we're also not just like complete bumbling buffoons. He's actually quite intelligent. He manages to get in with a local warlord so he can repair his ship. He gets scientists to come back from the future, but he still has that kind of, insatiable love of war that he has to go watch, like, what to him is a completely petty conflict between Irongron and whatever the Lord's name was. And that's the kind of Sontarans I like, whereas, I don't know, while this is definitely a better portrayal of them than we got in any of the Moffat era by far, they still do perhaps fall in being potato man funny a bit too much.
Well, here's a question, right? And I and I'll pull it back to the Poison Sky. I would argue, as much as I don't like the redesign in those episodes, the Sontarans come across as far more threatening.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They're far more threatening. Yeah. They're clever. They just massacre people. They don't give a shit. deliberately sort of think their way around like certain issues and whatever, and their defeat isn't contrived, and it isn't silly. And as much as I really like I think the Sontarans here look better, and I think there are a few scenes that do capture that threatening nature. I think overall they're weaker here than they have been in their Davis era. Not as bad as the Moffat era, which just makes them comic relief, but they're not what they should be.
I quite like the level of ridiculous machismo they had with Skak. Because he's here to do violence, and he's totally taking pleasure in that. But he also wants to ride a horse because that's a ridiculous like macho fantasy that he's going to ride into battle on a horse. And he's specifically gone to murder people in this time frame because he'll get a horse.
Now, you see, I love that. You see, I know I said the thing about Funny Potato Man earlier, but there's ways to do it well. And you're right, the kind of, taking the piss out of the machismo of the militarist in that way is funny. That really works with a Sontaran personality. But then, kind of just because you can make fun of that, type of personality doesn't mean that you have to make them just completely stupid all the time. I mean, they are meant to be professionals at war, like one of the best species at war, yet they just make such elementary mistakes. They can't aim. They leave themselves unguarded during their feeding period. Do you not think maybe you could have had some Sontarans get fed a different time and have them on guard outside rather than just leaving yourselves completely open to quite an arbitrary resolution of the conflict?
I think the characterization as a victim of the story having to be compressed into the time left after you take out the ass stuff.
But he's got a whole serial to play with. He's got 6 parts.
Yeah.
Maybe rather than wasting the first episode just introducing a billion things and not developing them, he could have used that time to slowly introduce things a bit better. So then there wouldn't have been this pacing issue.
And alternatively, you don't actually need to resolve the Sontaran conflict in this episode. 6 parts.
It's not.
And to be fair, we don't actually know if it is resolved. We know that it's resolved.
Oh yeah.
Context of this episode, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're back at some point in one of the future episodes.
Yeah, that's true. It's not been fully resolved, and it looks like they'll probably be back. But on the other side, I did quite like their plan. It was quite an interesting kind of Doctor Who plan, something different from the Sontarans do, because we know they can do time travel.
Yeah. I like the whole thing of going to the Crimean War, but not the Crimean War as it should be, like the Crimean War, where we've always been at war with the Sontarans.
Yeah, that was really cool. I love that bit with a map and China and Russia are Sontar. That was it feels very War Games-esque or something like that.
I like the weird sort of the way it sort of played on the characters as well, because they're not really sure why they're here at war with these aliens, and then it becomes even more mixed because they get absolutely massacred, and it's if they were at war with them forever, surely they would have lost a long time ago, and it doesn't, it doesn't quite gel.
Yeah,
I really like that.
Yeah, that conceptual side of the plot was brilliant. That was a proper old school Doctor Who plot. There's some kind of incongruity, some kind of mystery that kind of slowly unravels as the episode goes along. Maybe they could have kept it going for a little bit longer, because it just they said, right, this is the reason, and now we're going to do our big bombastic explosion ending, which doesn't really make that much sense. But there was some good positives here, which I haven't really said about that many Chibnall episodes, so I'm gonna praise it where I can. Right, so we're going to move on to the next bit. I suppose we've already really talked about the plot, about the Sontarans, but maybe let's move on to talking about the bit in the temple, because that's the one thing we've only briefly touched upon so far. So would you like to go first, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's sort of all about the sort of aesthetics of what we're seeing and what kind of implications we're getting about what kind of place this is. I'm interested to see where this goes. I think because the idea of this place in particular, which is controlling all of time, there are ways in which that could go, which could be very interesting, ways it could go that could be very stupid. But I'm on board with this, with the way it looks, and the idea of these sort of 5 people who are trapped in this position, controlling time, and then the robots pulling in people randomly. Can you fix it?
Yeah, I'll tell you what this bit did really well, this part of the episode, is something that Chibnall hasn't done well for almost the entirety of his era. It was show, don't tell. There was pretty much no exposition for the entirety of these scenes. And it was just a bit like, ooh, what's going on here? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Ooh, something new happened. What's this? It's like, it got me actually thinking about what's going on, which is, what good television should do. And I felt that part of it was handled really well.
Yeah, it also has the first instance I can think of in Doctor Who in a long time where somebody goes, "What year is it?" and the character they ask that to understands the implication. When Yaz runs into the Victorian in the tunnels. I think it's going to be Joseph Williamson. Anyways, she runs into him and she's like, "What year is it?" And he's like, "All right, so you're not from here then. You're not from this time." He's like, "All right, okay, that makes sense. Good. Yeah, that is how a normal person would react to that, because they'd be like, well, the implication is if you don't know what year it is, then you're not from this year." In general, though, I mean, I'd like to say this anyways. I really like the guy who plays Swarm.
Oh, yes.
He's a very theatrical villain. I really like his mannerisms. I find him very interesting to watch. Like, if you compare him to, what's the teeth guy called?
Tim Shaw.
Tim Shaw. Yeah, if you compare him to Tim Shaw, who's like, I guess, a proto big bad that Chibnall's trying to invent, he's so much more interesting. Like, he's just far more interesting to look at. I really like his visual and aesthetic design. I don't know about his duo. They've not really done anything with her yet. But I find Swarm to be very, very fun to watch. And yes, all right, maybe his dialogue is basically, "Oh, you don't know who I am, but I know you, and time's going to explode," or whatever. Maybe it's all a bit sort of grandiose and silly, but I find his performance really enjoyable.
You go first, Jack.
I would say the Swarm is really, really camp. And yet, even by the standards of the Chibnall era, he is actually one of the more frightening baddies. And I really like that. I like that they've got this ridiculous, 80s level campy Doctor Who villain who is also actually a little bit frightening, and he is going to kill people, and he seems to be pretty much unstoppable. And also his outfit is superb. Why can't the Doctor be wearing his outfit with the shoulder pads and the brocade and the scarf?
I'll tell you what, so far I love Swarm. You're right about the theatrical performance, Rory, and that's something we sadly don't see enough of these days. There seem to be less kind of theatre actors coming into television in that way, whereas he very clearly is one of those. And my God, it's so fun! People riff on campiness a bit, but I think when you're playing a big bad evil villain, come on, we need a bit of camp. And you're right, it does make it kind of scarier the way he just nonchalantly go around talking about death. I mean, compare it to Tim Shaw, who does a pretty stale form, just "I am a bit aggressive and do not like people," whereas we've got this guy Swarm, who's just "Oh yes, I do love to massacre people painfully." It's just I love it. As for the actual...
chewing the scenery, and it's really enjoyable to watch.
That's what we need. That's what I love in Doctor Who when you get villains like that. And I... Obviously, in terms of his character, we don't know a whole lot yet, but one thing I do like is how we're not really being told much about his motivations or anything like that. It's something that we're, slowly... Hopefully, if it goes the way I'm hoping it is, slowly get to see more of and learn more about, rather than just having it be expositioned as he's revealed, as has so often happened in recent times. Obviously, my opinion could change, and I could end up liking Swarm a lot less if his character and motivations aren't fleshed out in future episodes, but obviously this is episode 2 of a 6-part series, and very clearly this is something that's being built up. So far, I'm very optimistic about him, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of him. And man, what a cliffhanger he did! That was a proper Doctor Who cliffhanger.
Dylan, have you considered the fact that he is definitely the Rani? It's always the Rani, Dylan. One day it has to be the Rani, and this time it is the Rani.
They're both the Rani. They're two incarnations of the Rani. And the guy they killed in the Arctic, he was also the Rani. This was the limitation effect or whatever.
Well, that's why the costumes are so good. It's because it's the Rani.
Yeah.
We talk about Vinder maybe a little.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I think I like Jacob Anderson. I think he's a good actor. I feel like Vinder's going to get more development later on in the episodes. Right now, he's just sort of like one of those sort of faceless, sort of side characters that you get in six-parters or lengthier serialized stories. But for now, I think he's fine. He's enjoyable. I think him and Yaz have good chemistry. I think they played off each other well. What about anybody got any theories? I mean, I'm pretty sure he's a member of the Division.
He's the Rani.
Sure. Yeah, he's the Rani. Yeah, I only say that because his coat is a little bit like the Division coat. Like I'm like, yeah, he's probably one of them. Fuck it, why not?
Really? I didn't even notice that particularly.
It's the sort of the amber stripe on his back, like across his shoulder blades. It's very similar to the one of them wore in the last series in Fugitive of the Judoon. I think it was a very similar outfit. So that's my guess.
You're paying way more attention to Chibnall Who than I am. That's all I've got to say.
Hashtags. I just follow the hashtags.
He's sort of quite a sort of a RTD era character with that kind of slightly grubby, hard scrabble, sort of slightly bureaucratic future, where he's like doing some science, which is kind of dull, long-term job on a kind of slightly derelict spaceship.
He's almost similar to Zack from Impossible Planet.
Yeah.
Similar kind of character.
No, I think like the point, like there's clearly going to be more of a point to why he's in the story later, or I assume there is.
I'll explain later.
You would hope, but for now, yeah, he's along for the ride. He's puzzling things out in his own way.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I'd have to agree with Rory in the sense that I did quite like his chemistry with Yaz, or at least I like the actor's chemistry on screen, but I have nothing really to say about this character so far because I don't really know that much about him. But
I'm pretty sure he'll get a focused
yeah.
episode.
Oh yeah. I'm not worried about that because there's plenty of time to go, and clearly he's somebody who's going to become more of a focus as the story goes on. He's only had limited screen time, and there's nothing I've hated so far, so we'll just have to see how it goes along, really. Right, so before we get on to our final thoughts, let's just have a quick chat about the kind of the effects, the production, just everything kind of not about the writing or acting in this episode. Do you want to go first, Rory?
Yeah, sure. I think it looks quite good overall. I think the Crimea scenes, a strategic use of fog, I think, to sort of mask how perhaps limited the sets are. I think they're sort of the Sontaran shipyards in both Crimea and Liverpool. I think they both look quite nice. Like I said, I think the prosthetics for the Sontarans look great. I really do like that redesign. I love the uniforms. I really like the design of the temple as well. I thought it was very sort of Keys of Marinus, very strange looking.
Oh, true.
I noticed that we didn't get which I was expecting was, do you remember in the, before the show started, the promotional stuff, do you remember the Sontaran ship over the Mersey?
No. Oh, wait. Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah, I noticed we didn't get that. Now, I don't know if they cut it out because that looked trash in the promo, because it looked horrendous, or if it was just, meant to be like some promo stuff and was never meant to be in the episode. But overall, I thought the episode looked pretty good. Carvanista's outfit, I love. I really do like that design. It's very 1980s. It's just a cool prosthetic.
There's something off-putting about his eyes, though. I don't know what.
It's because he's a good boy, Dylan. You don't like good boys.
Yeah. You go on, Jack.
Yeah. Like all the alien costumes are very good, and obviously the whole entire look of Swarm and Azira and the passenger are just superb. One other thing I did like is there's the random shot when the Doctor's unconscious, where she sees the floating house and it's in black and white.
Oh yeah, that was great.
It's random complex thing, but that looks really cool.
Yeah, the Doctor entered the woman in black for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I will say is there's some parts of the direction I really like the fight scene between the Sontarans and the British was really cool, very visually striking, obviously, with the bright red British uniforms on the kind of foggy green background fighting the Sontarans. That was something that, it looked cool. Obviously, the only time I think I'd really be critical of the direction, accepting stuff that I might have nitpicks for, but can be explained away by the fact that they were shooting during a pandemic, is obviously the scene that we talked about earlier with Dan and just like having 50 million shots, like, you know, right at point blank range, right in front of him while running in a straight line. It's like, as the director, can you not make that look a bit less awkward and a bit more believable? You know, it wouldn't be hard.
Well, if I was going to nitpick as well, I would be like, that Sontaran battle scene is pretty cool, but like they missed a really good opportunity to have like soldiers trying to do like a line formation, you know, like trying to do like staggered gunshot fire, like with like crappy rifles.
Line volley, yeah.
Down. Yeah, instead they just have them run in. I'm like, mate, that would have been so cool to just watch them like get absolutely minced trying to use their tactics against, you know, like alien supreme technology.
Now what
I think that could have been a cool thing to see.
Yeah, they should have done like the line volley fire, and then when then they realised that wasn't working, they should have like said, right, we're going to do like a charge of the light brigade type thing, because obviously it's the Crimean War, and they try to like stab them on the end of the bayonets, and it kind of maybe kills a few Sontarans at the front, but they still get massacred.
I genuinely think in an earlier draft of this script there probably was a charge of the Light Brigade, but then they realised they couldn't afford the horses. I think genuinely that might.
I wanted to ride a horse, but we couldn't afford to have any apart from in this one scene.
Could afford one horse, and we're going to give it the Sontarans.
I have the one BBC horse. No human may take the horse from me.
The BBC has one horse.
Well, the rest of the horses were put down. Cat, foot, and mouth. Only had one left for the Sontaran.
Every BBC production which needs a horse is only allowed to use that one.
Yeah, no, that's actually the same one that David Tennant was leaping through in Go to Fireplace. Still the same one. He's still going. What a trooper. We only spot a small Sontaran though these days.
Can we talk about nitpicks and a few issues I have with the episode though? Like, I mean, generally pretty positive, but there are still a few.
Yeah, go ahead. Give a guess.
First of all, a alien race bred for war doesn't understand the concept of shift patterns. Apparently, everyone goes off at the same time. Everyone comes back at the same time.
I mentioned this earlier.
No rotation. Yeah, no, it's like, come on now, Chibs. Come on, there's got to be a way around this that doesn't involve you eliminating the concept of people having staggered shifts at work. Come on now, because it is a job. Also, my biggest gripe with the episode, the morality, he still doesn't understand how morality works, I'm pretty sure. Why does the Doctor get annoyed that General Logan blows up the Sontaran ships? I don't understand. And why is she not annoyed then when she goes back to the present and Dan and Carvanista have blown up all the other ships? She's just
True!
Like, good for you. And don't forget, they were returning to the present where they would have been blown up by Dan and Carvanista. So the net result is the same. They get blown up. They either get blown up in the Crimea or they get blown up in contemporary Earth. Either way, they get blown up. So why does she get so annoyed? I don't get it.
I mean,
this is an alien race that commits war crimes like every 5 minutes.
And the Sontarans aren't like humans or like Silurians or anything like that. They're genetically engineered to fight and kill, and that's literally all they do. They're like Daleks in that sense. All they do is fight and kill. And if you have a species that only fight and kill, it's acceptable to kill them in self-defense, even if they're doing a strategic withdrawal, as they put it. It's like still actually very permissible and morally defensible to say, right, well, we're just going to blow them all up because
we'll be back. They literally said we'll be back, and they're like, no. It's like we literally in this episode watched them commit summary executions on like innocent civilians, and we're meant to like if you compare this like sort of moral discourse, like compare it to like Doctor Who and the Silurians, like it's not the same level at all. Like you were on the Doctor's side in Doctor Who and the Silurians, you're like, yes, that was gross. They should not have killed those innocent creatures because they weren't posing a threat. But in this episode, it's like, no, I'm on the general side. Blow them up, fuck them.
It makes sense. It'll save, like, loads of lives in the long run.
Plus, they're going to be blown up anyways, so it doesn't matter. The net result is the same. Like, come on now, you're not about consequential ethics, Doctor. What is your ethical system? Come on, explain it to me.
Chibnall's Doctor Who is, like, really terrible deontology.
It's only acceptable to massacre soldiers outside of a combat situation if you are a Scouse man and a dog.
Like, it's even more permissible in the Christmas Invasion, because at least in the Christmas Invasion, it's even more permissible that the Doctor's angry, because in the Christmas Invasion, the Sycorax don't go, we'll be back, we're coming back, lads, we're going to come back and kill you all again. In this, they're like, oh no, we're coming back, we'll be back.
And also, there's no indication that the Sycorax are a species that are entirely bred for war. Like, for all we know, the Sycorax may be capable of change, whereas the Sontarans aren't. Like, they're a cloned race. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like the Daleks. You can't reason with them. They're just what they are.
If you have a species that are just death incarnate, it is permissible to rid them of the world for the greater good of species that aren't death incarnate, who are capable of living in peace and changing. You know, it's like, well, does Chibnall even think about this stuff, or does he just like, right, the Doctor has to have a moral grandstand moment because people liked those when David Tennant's Doctor did it, or whatever?
I think it's because Chibnall thinks the Doctor's moral stance is that killing is always bad, whereas that's not my interpretation of the character at all. Like, it's not that killing is bad, it's that it should be, you should try and avoid it, but not that it's never... It's like the Doctor has killed far too many people themselves to take the position that you shouldn't kill people. There is a moral flexibility there that the character has demonstrated time and time again. When John Pertwee's, slaughtering Ogrons for fun, blasting them away when they're just...
Well, that's just bigotry, that bit,
Macho Daleks who want to ride horses.
I want to see a Dalek riding a horse, please.
Crushing some poor stallion's spine, just...
The one BBC horse is going to get killed with a Dalek prop on top of it.
It's a worthy sacrifice.
I wanted to ride a horse.
I've just my thought. My head was filled with
equine ethics in relation to Daleks. Can horses be rode ethically by Daleks? I'm gonna go with not if they're in their casing because it's too heavy, but if they're little tentacles, yeah, they could probably ride a horse. Not that heavy.
You need to get some really advanced stirrups to kind of hold all the tentacles in place and have it so its head was up.
I haven't talked about Mary Seacole in the general yet. We should do that.
Yes.
Should we though? Is like they barely had any character in it. And
I would say Mary Seacole was a fairly well done historical character in regards to how they presented her. Like they didn't exposit too heavily. I mean, they did a little, but it wasn't terrible. It got the idea across, and then they sort of made use of her famous attributes of observation to play it into the plot. I'm like, yeah, that's how you should probably do a historical character.
I mean, I don't have any problem with that kind of stuff, but it's just she had about 10 lines, so I didn't really care much about her as a character. Like, obviously important historical figure in real life, but in terms of watching this as a piece of entertainment, I didn't really care for her that much.
My biggest criticism of General Logan is, where the hell's his command structure? Like, come on now. He's just been bullied by a nurse and a doctor who've just come out of nowhere. He's not asserting his authority at all, even though apparently he is a general.
We didn't see him give orders to anybody, did we? Like, other than...
we did. We saw him order his troops into a merciless slaughter.
Yeah, but was that even on screen? I don't remember any other soldiers. I don't remember any other soldiers, which is a bit odd for an episode about a war. But oh well, I suppose that's a nitpick.
They could only afford the soldiers for one scene.
The one BBC soldier.
If this was a two-parter, I feel like they would have given one of the soldiers a little side character to the plot. But as is for an hour, it doesn't need it. We get it.
Yeah, right, I can overlook that.
The side characters think we're just again victims of it being a little bit compressed. It's like, as a quick sort of. I think the whole thing was about an hour, so we could probably say it was the main plot was about 45 minutes. It's about what you can expect for a 45-minute Doctor Who story where there's a lot going on.
And obviously, I think that that Doctor Who should have more breathing room, but I've said it more. I think I say it in almost every discussion, but there we go. Right, we're going to move on to our final thoughts now. So, would you like to go first, Jack?
Yes, Chris Chibnall has delivered a solid episode of Doctor Who with a relatively coherent through plot and some characters with consistent traits doing things. So hopefully he can continue to do that for the remaining four episodes. This is what we want to see, Chris, please.
The bar is so low.
Yeah, it really
so
is.
low.
It's like literally,
How-
we're excited because an episode of Doctor Who was enjoyable.
It was good. So yeah, I think it's probably something like a 7 out of 10.
I don't know. I probably would go more kind of if I had a number, even though I don't like numbers out of 10. But if I was going to do it, I'd probably say something like a 6 because I'd say it's above average, just about. I enjoyed it. I did enjoy watching this, and it has maybe a little more hopeful for Flux. As even though I still think that part one's shit, and the rest of Flux isn't going to change that, by the way. But it's made me think, well, that the structure of part one's probably not going to happen again, so hopefully they'll be a bit more like this. I still have problems with it. I still think that there were quite a few criticisms to have. Some of them, quite common themes throughout the Chibnall era in terms of, writing overly convenient situations for the Doctor to solve the plot or for main characters to escape from situations. It's just like, could you not write it a bit more cleverly, because this just doesn't feel very satisfying. But on the whole, I had some issues with it, but I did enjoy it. It's not a great episode, but it is enjoyable, and I'm not gonna complain too much about an episode that I find mostly enjoyable, but will still harp on about some of the features I think that Chris Chibnall could improve to make this better television.
Yeah, I suppose first of all, serialization is the way to go.
Hey,
I think,
based.
I think, yes. I mean, and serialization, and in a modern context, can work fine. I don't mean we have to have 6 one-hour parts of people wandering around a spaceship trying to figure out what's going on.
I do.
What I mean is, yeah, I know you do, Dylan.
I'm joking, man.
But I think serialization is the way to go because for once I'm actually interested in what's happening, which is nice. I think the biggest praise I can give for this episode, which I don't think I could give to any episode of Chris Chibnall's Doctor Who, aside from maybe Villa Diodati, is I would happily rewatch this. I would sit down and rewatch this episode and think, that was fun. I enjoyed that. I had a good time watching it. It has its flaws. I don't necessarily think the characterization of the Sontarans is as strong as it could be. I think, the actual resolution is a bit silly, but, when isn't it? But overall, yeah, I'd sort of float around the 6 out of 10, the 7 out of 10 marker. But beyond that, I would rewatch it. Like, when I watched it, I was like, this is fun. I'm having a fun time. I'm enjoying this. Whereas most of the time with Chris Chibnall's Doctor Who, I'm like sitting there rolling my eyes going, well, that's a dumb line. That doesn't make any sense. Why would you write that? Why wouldn't you show us and not tell us that? Didn't really happen that much in this episode, if at all, really. So, yeah, I mean, the bar is incredibly low. We're congratulating him for doing things that, any basic writer should be able to do. But, he's doing them. So, fuck it. Well done.
Yeah,
and to the next episode of Doctor Who, I will happily make sure I carve out the time to watch it on broadcast, which I wasn't doing last season or the season before. I was just watching it whenever.
Yeah, no, and I think that now that we're seeing that Chibnall's kind of getting some of this stuff a bit more, because even though I hated the first episode, there was still some kind of positive changes in terms of how they introduced Dan, and so I'm hoping that Chibnall has at least, in some ways, improved some of the fundamental flaws we're talking about in terms of like show, don't tell, kind of things that make no sense. Obviously, there's still a little bit of that, but it is an improvement. And if Flux can keep this kind of quality up for the rest of it, I'm not going to love it, but I'm certainly going to have enjoyed it. And that is a far, 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 far higher praise than the last 2 series, for sure.
If it's the Rani, you'll love it. You'll be like, oh my god, it's the Rani. I love this. 10 out of 10. Best
okay, I may be a massive Classic Who simp, but the Rani is fine. She doesn't need to be brought back.
That's sacrilege.
There's nobody actually cares about the Rani. They just say they should be brought back because she's one of the only things that hasn't been brought back that was a recurring Classic Who character. But there generally are people.
She's barely even a recurring character. She's in 2 stories. Like, Sovalon Glitz is a recurring character by that myth.
Yeah, where is Glitz? Glitz, actual fun character. Also, there's fireworks going off now, which I think shows it's time for this to end because this recording. Oh my god, this recording is ruined. Right, bye guys, bye.